I'm Tigger, the white cat in this house. Lately, Mia seems down, and I'm worried about her. Meow.
My name's Mia. I live with my husband named John and our white cat, Oliver. I've had Oliver since before I got married when I found him abandoned, so it's been about 5 years now. There haven't been any issues in my marriage with John, but I've been concerned about his relationship with his parents. Apparently, he was raised pretty strictly by his father, with no games and no TV. Even playing with friends was off limits. Growing up that way, John never made any friends and was pretty withdrawn until he met me. That strict father-in-law passed away 2 years after we got married. He suddenly collapsed during breakfast and didn't make it. Not that my mother-in-law had put anything in his food. He had been on medication for high blood pressure, so the doctors figured that was a heart attack. When he passed away, I noticed something odd about John, who was smiling for some reason.
There's no one left to stand in my way,
As he muttered while looking at his father's photo, his expression was eerie. No matter how awful a parent might have been, most people would pretend to be sad, huh? Honestly, from that moment, I started feeling afraid of John. It was like he'd turned into someone else or had been possessed by something dark. Then, a week later, after the funeral and all the necessary arrangements, John's behavior changed drastically. He spent all of our savings for our dream house on gambling.
Don't you want to live in a mansion?
He shouted at me when I tried to stop him, and I was so scared by his outburst that I didn't dare to try again. Just like that, all our savings vanished on a wild bet. Though I was shocked, I tried to convince myself that maybe that would be a wake-up call for him. Unfortunately, life was not that easy. John seemed unable to let go of the thrill of gambling and began using even our household money for that. He was completely swallowed up by the addiction. Shouting,
The crazier, the better.
He only ever bet on long shots and never won, of course. Even if he did bet on a favorite, he still lost. He didn't have an ounce of luck when it came to gambling. In fact, my picks won, but I kept that to myself. John works as a salesperson at a big corporation. I work from home, and we've been living with his mom since his father passed. After setting aside money for savings and household expenses, we agreed that we both could spend whatever was left over as we wanted. However, since John started blowing our house fund on gambling, he's been taking money from wherever he can, including my wallet too. One can overcome a gambling habit if one is strictly controlled. That's what a book said, so I tried some strategies that seemed suited for him. Eventually, since John was taking even our living expenses, I decided to take over our finances. When I told him about that, he yelled,
Are you trying to steal my money, you thief?
And refused. Even when I explained him about the gambling addiction, he raged.
I'm not sick. I'm perfectly healthy.
And threw a remote at me. That almost hit Oliver, so I moved the cat to my room, which just made him shout.
You care more about that cat than me.
No matter what I said after that, he refused to understand his addiction and kept throwing things at me, so I realized it was hopeless. That was when he told me,
I care more about gambling than I do about you.
6 months after my father-in-law's death, my mother-in-law had no idea about John's situation. He'd been lying to her, saying only using his allowance to gamble. He was determined not to show her his flaws. For him, his mom was that comforting, indulgent presence, the complete opposite of his father. If his father was a devil, then his mother would be like an angel. John would do whatever he could to avoid getting on her bad side. Even so, I wanted him to stop using me to stay in her good graces. That day again, my mother-in-law had a lecture ready for me.
Mia, John told me that you complain about everything he does. A good wife should just stay quiet and lets her husband do as he pleases.
Even if you say so, John's been saying some really terrible things to me.
I'm his mother, so I know him well. He's sensitive, you see. There's no way he'd say cruel things. That's something you must have forced him to do.
There she was, saying all that to my face with that thinly veiled smugness. As soon as I started to say,
But managing his gambling habit is really important.
I was cut off with,
Oh, don't be so dramatic. Let him enjoy a little gambling here and there. You wouldn't understand. Lazing around at home all day. But men have social obligations too, you know? My husband went to the casino once a month to blow off steam. Instead of meddling in my son's life, why don't you polish up your housekeeping skills? As I checked your room now and then, you know, it's dusty and practically unlivable. Honestly, such a lazy wife you are.
Are you telling me you entered my room without asking? Wait, is that why some of my work tools have disappeared?
Like that junk couldn't be work tools, huh? You don't even have a job. John even told me that you're just a leech. A real bum.
Huh.
I'd explained to him that I worked from home. I'd even introduced him to my clients, and he'd even greeted.
Thank you for everything you do for my wife at work.
Despite that, he considered me as a bum? Had gambling wiped his memory too?
You know, everything in this house is mine. I can toss it, sell it, do whatever I like. If you don't want to be kicked out, I suggest you stop defying me.
She cackled and left the room without letting me get a word in. Ever since my father-in-law had passed, my mother-in-law had changed too. It was like all her malice had come to the surface, and her bullying had only grown bolder. If I tried telling John about that, he would just shout.
So now you're calling my mom a thief. Trying to make up excuses to milk me for money. What a wicked woman you are.
Not only would he not believe me, but would only yell at me. Why did I marry such a man? Why did I put up with all of that without abandoning him? Those questions kept getting stronger in my mind. Finally, when I discovered that John had dipped into my savings, something snapped in me. I'd get a divorce. I'd had enough. If I stayed in that life, I'd only be headed toward ruin. Yet, I didn't think that pair would easily let me go, their convenient live-in maid. Even if I brought up divorce, I doubted they'd agree without a fight. Then, unexpectedly, a strange lifeline appeared.
Mia, I have a favor to ask.
My mother-in-law cooed at me. That was honestly creepy.
Will you divorce John? I know you're broke, since you're unemployed. So how about I give you $100,000 as severance pay?
Divorce with a payout? I almost thought I was dreaming, so I scratched my arm with Oliver's claw to check, which hurt. Nope, not a dream.
I understand that you don't want to leave John, as he's your beloved husband, after all. But I could never forgive you, you know? You were always trying to paint me as the villain to get his attention. But you're just not good enough for him. He's absolutely sick of you. As for your shared savings, you claimed it was for a new home. Yet, you've already spent it all, haven't you?
Huh?
I was too stunned to respond properly. It seems John pinned his spending on me.
John is generous and says he'll forgive you, but I just can't. So, take the $100,000 and stay out of our lives for good.
I almost screamed out to her that was all lies, but I knew there was no point as she wouldn't believe me. When I considered how to handle that, a thought crossed my mind. If I took the payout and divorced him, I might be able to give them a lesson. Besides, if the idea came from his angelic mother, John might even go along with the divorce. After all, he'd never go against her wishes.
All right. I'll gladly accept your offer. I truly appreciate you thinking of my future.
I forced myself to smile, hiding my inner tension. With my mother-in-law handling everything, the divorce process went smoothly. Though my savings had been completely drained, the generous settlement more than made up for that. Just in case, I had her sign a document regarding the settlement, and that was transferred immediately, which made me relieved. The $100,000 was probably from my father-in-law's inheritance, but honestly, I didn't care anymore. I rented a place near my workplace and started a new life with my cat, Oliver. That place came with a dreamy walk-in closet and a loft. I even installed a catwalk along the walls, which both Oliver and I absolutely loved. The power of money was truly incredible. By investing in a nice place, I could finally find peace, and gradually, memories of my ex-husband and mother-in-law's mistreatment started fading. I hoped I could forget that all, though I knew that wouldn't happen. Sure enough, 5 months later, I got a call from my mother-in-law.
Mia, why didn't you tell me? Please, help me.
Her voice sounded far weaker than I'd ever imagined, and I was startled.
I regret forcing you out. Please, I'm begging you. Help me.
She began to explain her situation. Apparently, the reason she'd pushed me for a divorce was because John had told her.
I'd rather live with you than with that wife. I'll take care of you for the rest of your life.
Being deeply attached to her son, she quickly agreed and even gathered a large sum of money to speed up the divorce process. They began living together immediately, but, not knowing about his gambling addiction, she soon faced his request.
Mom, you can trust me to handle the household finances now, so why don't you transfer the family home into my name?
Thinking her responsible son would be safe to rely on, she agreed. After all, the house would eventually be inherited by her son. Changing the name on the deed shouldn't be a problem. Thinking that, my mother-in-law nodded as if that were a simple favor. Little did she know that was the worst decision she could make. As soon as the house was transferred into John's name, he revealed his true intentions. First, he took out a real estate loan against the house in order to continue his gambling. My mother-in-law only discovered that the previous day when a foreclosure notice arrived from a lender.
What does this mean?
She demanded John. He simply replied,
Oh, that notice. I spent that money for gambling. Got a problem with that?
She questioned him further, only to learn that he had put the house up as collateral to pay off gambling debts, and then gambled the loan money away again. According to John, he'd bet everything on one horse, convinced.
This time, with that kind of money, I'll be rich. This horse has never lost, and there's no way it could lose now.
However, in a shocking twist, the horse stumbled at the last second, and a long shot took the win. The sure-win horse's loss was dubbed the upset of the century. John just didn't have the slightest bit of luck in gambling. That was downright pathetic. After that, he had missed payment after payment, going more than 6 months without repaying a dime. My mother-in-law was floored because he'd drained anything he could use, including his inheritance, savings, and salary as well. On top of that, he had the nerve to say,
Don't worry, Mom. I'll just win it all back on bike racing. So, can you give me whatever's left of Dad's inheritance?
When she explained that nearly all of that had gone to my settlement, he flew into a rage and yelled,
How could you give her $100,000 without telling me? If I'd had that, I'd have doubled it gambling by now.
Thus, my mother-in-law was contacting me to demand that money back.
With that signed document, that's impossible.
Please, Mia, we're family. Please, I'm begging you.
My mother-in-law was sobbing, but her tears were worth less than a cent to me. Honestly, I felt like charging her for emotional distress.
Nope, sorry. You'll just have to work hard to pay it back.
I was about to hang up when her tone shifted drastically.
You can't talk like that when family is desperately asking for help. How heartless. Any decent person would think about it out of sympathy.
I let out a deep sigh.
You know, I've pointed out his gambling habit countless times. Despite that, you were the one who brushed it off and mocked me, weren't you?
Well, that's...
If you'd believed even a little of what I said, this wouldn't have happened. Do you understand? This is all a situation you brought upon yourself.
I didn't know anything. I had no idea his gambling addiction was that serious. If you'd pushed harder, maybe I would have listened. See, this is all your fault. Take responsibility.
Oh my. With a mother like you, no wonder he turned out that way. You two really are a pair, aren't you? You couldn't even tell your own son was lying, yet you claimed that as his mother, you knew everything about him? Give me a break. And just so you know, it was your son who gambled away the savings. You think I spent that? Don't be ridiculous. Your son was just a compulsive liar. It serves him right. Besides, we're no longer family thanks to you, so you can handle your family's problems on your own.
My mother-in-law fell silent, overwhelmed by my words, but I could tell she hadn't given up. She suddenly said,
Oh, I know. I'll just claim you stole $50,000 from me. I'll sue you and get that $100,000 back.
For your information, I recorded this call. I figured you'd say something like that, and I also have that signed document, remember?
Wait, hold on.
You are going to sue to get the $100,000 back, right? Go ahead, see how that works out. Maybe you'll even win. By the way, do you have the money to file a lawsuit? Need me to lend it to you?
Grr.
Oh, did I make you go all monkey mode? I guess we can't have a sensible conversation then. Goodbye.
After that, I heard my mother-in-law went to a law firm for advice, but they turned her away.
Give me a free consultation. Cover the cost of the lawsuit too.
She apparently yelled like that, and they naturally refused. A few days later, John reached out, asking me to get back together. Since he had no assets left to use as collateral and his payments had fallen far behind, some intimidating associates had started visiting daily. The family home had a buyer lined up, and John and his mother had to move out in a few days. However, he had nowhere to go with no money. If he tried to run, he'd be caught by those associates for sure. That was why he wanted me to take him in and cover his debts. That was what he wanted. When I suggested him ask his coworkers for help, he confessed that the associates had started visiting him at work, and the debt had become public knowledge. Apparently, he had borrowed so much from colleagues that his addiction disrupted the company's environment, leading to his firing. He did have a small severance package, but spent that all on gambling again. He was truly hopeless.
Come on, just let me stay with you. I'm really sorry for everything I did.
Cut the crap. I know your game. You just want to gamble with my money, don't you?
Well,
Fine. Tell me where you are right now.
I'm hiding out in the jungle gym at the park near the house. I figured it's a good place to avoid the debt collectors.
I see. Well, stay there for a bit. I've got a little gift coming your way.
I hung up and made a phone call. Soon enough, his creditors tracked him down and took him away in a black car. I hope he enjoyed my little gift. All this chaos started with the death of my father-in-law. It's amazing how much things changed with just one person gone. Maybe he had that much influence over them. Or maybe this would have happened to anyone in someone's absence. Someday, I'll probably remarry and start a new family. When that time comes, I'll make sure my husband doesn't fall into gambling addiction, and I'll ensure my mother-in-law doesn't turn into my enemy.